Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgie Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the official death toll from West Africa's Ebola epidemic creeps ever closer to 7,000. But there are hopes that its spread in Sierra Leone is slowing. Volunteers there go door to door searching for hidden patients. Also, we take a closer look behind the scenes as the African Development Bank settles into its new headquarters in Abidjan. Forced out by civil war, its return after 13 years is a show of faith in the Ivorian future. And Niger's refugee camps keep growing. It's seeing a flood of people fleeing from Libya's instability in the north and Nigeria's insurgency in the south. First up, the official death toll from the Ebola epidemic gripping West Africa has risen to 6,915. However, there is a glimmer of good news. The spread of the virus in Sierra Leone has slowed. It's recently overtaken Liberia as the country with the highest number of infections. The fight back against the outbreak will overshadow, though, the holiday season, as travel restrictions have been brought in and a 15-day door-to-door hunt for hidden Ebola patients begins. Claire Murphy has the story.
It marks a step up in efforts to eradicate Ebola in Sierra Leone. This Wednesday, health workers began combing for hidden cases of the virus around the capital, Freetown. Moving house to house in the search for patients, any suspected cases will be transported to newly built treatment centres. People they've been in contact with also to be checked. Experts say the government initiative is imperative as registered cases reach alarming numbers.
Our best bet right now is to count on behaviours, attitudes, community mobilization, treatment, safe and dignified burials, and then strengthening the systems, the health systems as well as the community systems.
Sweeping efforts to tackle Ebola will also see travel restrictions introduced over the holidays. Worshippers will be allowed to attend church on Christmas Day, but must return home immediately afterwards. The army will be deployed to make sure no public gatherings are held, and Freetown residents will even be barred from travelling between districts and to rural areas.
I know that this is the festive season where Sierra Leoneans often celebrate with families in a flamboyant and joyous manner. But all must be reminded that our country is at war with a vicious enemy.
Although transmission rates have slowed over recent weeks, Ebola is still spreading faster in Sierra Leone than in Liberia or Guinea, and almost half of the 18,000 cases confirmed to date have been reported in the former British colony.
At least one person's died and several others remain trapped in the remains of a collapsed building in Nairobi. Rescuers are still trying to sift through the rubble after the 5-storey residential building fell down early on Wednesday. The 6th floor had been being added to the building prior to its collapse. Local authorities say that an investigation into what caused it will begin after the search and rescue operations finished. Nigeria has been forced to scale back its growth outlook after taking a hammering from the dramatic fall in the price of oil. Presenting the budget on Wednesday, the finance minister for Africa's top economy revised the figures for this year from 6.4% to 5.5%. Now, markets closed with the Naira at a record low. Nigeria relies on more than 75% of its revenue from oil exports, and global crude prices have almost halved over the last 6 months. Efforts to diversify over the years have had mixed results. Some say oil dependency is Nigerian economy's biggest systematic flaw. Ivory Coast is still rebuilding itself and its reputation after decades of division and instability culminated in post-electoral violence in 2010. Well, one welcome sign of growing confidence in the country's economy has been the recent return of the African Development Bank after 13 years away. Our correspondent took a closer look at the new headquarters.
In the heart of Abidjan's business district, 3 letters have reappeared. The African Development Bank has reopened in Ivory Coast's economic capital after more than a decade away. It's a show of faith in the West African country by an organisation which counts 53 African nations amongst its 78 member states.
It's the first strong sign that an economic revival is underway here. Investors' confidence has also returned. And most important of all is the Ivorian ambition to be a driving force within the West African Economic and Monetary Union.
The building is huge. 26 floors, kilometres of corridors and some 2,000 employees. 4 months after their official move, and it's still not complete. Moving boxes can still be spotted here and there. But although the building isn't ready, the African Development Bank is in action, supporting the financial sectors of fragile economies, financing infrastructure and sanitation projects like they do here. The team's building water pipelines to prevent flooding.
We put these structures in place to temporarily stop the leaking water, and they take just a low-pressure flow to the Indian intersection. It's where about 80% of Abidjan residents pass every day.
The bank says its return to Abidjan won't change how it does business. But after more than a decade away, it's not the same bank that Ivorians knew before. The bank's doubled its number of staff and tripled its capital, now at $9 billion.
This week saw African leaders voice their concerns about the collateral damage in the region caused by various crises. The fallout from Nigeria's Islamist insurgency and Libya's instability were of particular concern. Well, one country bearing the brunt from both these conflicts is Niger. It's seen an influx of refugees from its northern and southern neighbours.
Tens of thousands of refugees are now living in Niger in camps like this one. The country is located between two nations in turmoil, Libya in the north and Nigeria in the south. The chaos in Libya since the fall of Gaddafi means migrants from sub-Saharan Africa are returning south. Here in Agadez, these men from Mali, Senegal, Cameroon are treated in a Red Cross centre.
In Libya you work, but you don't get paid for it.
I spent 2 months and 2 weeks there in prison. They took my passport and my ID. I only have these clothes. It's not easy.
Here in southeast Niger, the refugees are Nigerian. They have fled Boko Haram's atrocities. Just last month, 10,000 people crossed the border and abandoned their homes.
Anyone who wanted to leave the city they caught and slaughtered. They go after married women and marry young girls who are not yet of age. The rest become their slaves. As for the young boys, if they're caught they cut their throats, or they are given weapons to join. If they refuse they are shot. That is why we fled.
Since May last year, some 90,000 Nigerian refugees have arrived in Niger, a poor country that is struggling to cope with such a huge influx.
Finally, we take a moment to pat ourselves on the back. One of our correspondents has been awarded a top prize for her reporting in Africa. Tatiana Mousseau's been given the Ricardo Ortega Prize from the United Nations Correspondents Association for an emotive report on the conflict in Central African Republic that aired earlier this year. Take a look.
They finally hit the road 3 hours late. Around 30 civilians climb aboard, taking advantage of the convoy to return to Bangui. Shopkeeper Blanche and her relatives have been stuck in Cameroon since the 5th of January.
That's my sister, my other sister, and that's my brother. That's my mother and my little sister and my other brother. There's a crisis in Bangui. There's no salt, no rice, not even any soap. We wanted to come back with supplies to help families, but the road's been closed for 2 months.
They're going home in hopeful spirits, dreaming of political stability now that a woman's leading the country.
We're happy. We're happy we're going back to Bangui today.
But these women won't reach Bangui. Their truck will plunge into a ravine. There will be one survivor and no news of the rest.
Well, we'll leave it there. That's it for African News. Stay with us. More coming up.